today. I woke up tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. No. This was a soul-deep exhaustion. It clings to you like a shadow you can't outrun. For years, I tried. Oh, how I tried. I was begging for love without even knowing it. Every smile, every gesture, a silent plea. Please, see me. Please, love me. But the silence was always louder. It echoed from a long, long time ago. A small girl, sitting alone in a quiet room. I can still feel it. The chill in the air, the ache in my chest, a tiny heart cracking under the weight of something too big for her to understand. That feeling, it never really left. It just changed its name, from loneliness to anxiety, from a whisper to a scream in my head. I remember her eyes, my mother's eyes. They were often elsewhere, or they looked through me as if I was made of glass, invisible. I craved her warmth, her touch, a simple word of approval, but it rarely came. Or it came wrapped in conditions, in a disappointment I could taste. "You're too sensitive," she'd say. Or, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Or, "The one that truly sunk its teeth in? You make things so difficult." Difficult. That word became a brand, burned onto my skin, my identity. Was I really that difficult? Was I a burden? A mistake? A child doesn't question these things. A child just absorbs, like a sponge. And the sponge gets heavy, filled with poison of not being enough. I remember one afternoon. I must have been 5. I brought her a drawing, a vibrant, messy flower, full of clumsy love. She glanced at it, barely. She said, "That's nice," without looking up from her book. Nice. Just nice. Not beautiful. Not amazing. Not, "I love it, my little artist." It was a small moment, in a lifetime of small moments, but each one was a pebble, dropped into a deep well, creating ripples of doubt. Pebbles became stones. Stones became boulders, and I carried them, all of them, on my back, on my heart. The weight grew. With every relationship that mirrored that first primal wound, every friend who drifted away, every lover who left, it all felt like proof. Proof of my inherent unworthiness. I learned to anticipate rejection, to expect it, almost to invite it, because the pain of the unexpected was too much to bear. So I became a chameleon, changing colors, to fit in, to be liked, to be loved. Even for a moment, I would twist myself into knots, ignoring my own needs, my own desires, all to earn a crumb of affection, a fleeting glance of acceptance. I silenced my own voice, because my voice, my true voice, felt like a threat, something that would push people away, just like it pushed her away. The silence grew louder within me, a heavy blanket, suffocating. And under it, the little girl was still there, still waiting, still believing she was not enough. She never was in her eyes. And that belief, it became my blueprint, my map for navigating the world, a map drawn by a wounded child. I grew up with that voice in my head. That voice, it followed me into every room, every relationship, every quiet moment. It whispered, "You're too much. You're not enough. You'll always be alone." And I believed it, deeply, painfully. So I became a fixer, a pleaser, a chameleon, changing my colors for anyone, for everyone, just to feel a flicker of acceptance. I dated men who mirrored that old wound, men who were emotionally distant, who were critical, who saw my efforts as a given, never as a gift. I'd bend over backwards, cook their favorite meals, listen to their every problem, put their needs, always, before my own. And still, it was never enough. One relationship, he was charming at first, so attentive. He made me feel seen for a little while. Then the cracks appeared, small at first, a dismissive comment, a forgotten promise. Then the controlling began. "You can't wear that. Why are you talking to him?" And the voice in my head, it screamed, "See? You're unlovable. You deserve this." I walked on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing, to do the wrong thing, terrified of being abandoned again. Because abandonment, that was my deepest fear. I lost myself completely. My friends noticed. "You're not yourself anymore," they'd say. But I didn't know who myself was anymore. The exhaustion wasn't just emotional. It became physical. A constant fatigue, like I was running a marathon, uphill every single day. My body ached. My head pounded. I couldn't sleep. Or I'd sleep too much, but I never felt rested. Anxiety became my shadow, following me everywhere. Tightness in my chest, palpitations, the feeling that something terrible was always about to happen. I'd isolate myself, stay home, turn down invitations, because facing the world, facing people, felt like too much work, too much pretending. One Sunday, I hit rock bottom. I was sitting on my bedroom floor. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. My phone was in my hand, scrolling aimlessly, trying to numb the ache, trying to escape the silence, which was no longer golden, but deafening. I stumbled upon a video, someone talking about psychology, about the unconscious, about Carl Jung. I'd heard the name before, in passing, but it never stuck. Not until that moment, in that profound silence. The man in the video spoke softly, calmly, and then he said something that stopped me cold. "What you accept without question imprisons you." He paused, and the silence in my room, it felt different now, heavy with meaning. "What you accept without question imprisons you." The words echoed in my ears, in my mind, in my very bones. It was like a lightning bolt, a sudden, jarring clarity, a truth I had been running from my entire life. I had accepted the lies, the labels, the belief that I was unlovable, without question, and it had imprisoned me in a cage of my own making, built on the foundations of old wounds. I didn't fully understand it then. Not really. Not the depth of it. But something shifted inside me. A tiny crack in the wall, a sliver of light. It was a seed, planted in the barren soil of my despair. A whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was another way, another path, beyond the prison walls. If you've ever lived something like this, the constant striving, the deep exhaustion, the feeling of being trapped by something you can't name, comment below. Sometimes just putting it into words is the beginning of healing. That tiny crack, that sliver of light, it grew, slowly, painfully, but it grew. After that Sunday, after those words from Jung, I couldn't stop thinking about them. What you accept without question imprisons you. It felt like a key, but I didn't know which lock it fit or how to turn it. I started searching, reading, listening to more videos, anything I could find about Carl Jung. It wasn't easy. His ideas felt dense, like a language I almost understood, but not quite. I'd read a sentence and feel a jolt of recognition, then get lost in the next paragraph. But I kept going, driven by that desperate hope. One day, I heard another phrase. It hit me even harder than the first. It was about the shadow, about the parts of ourselves we deny, we hide. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it destiny. My breath caught. Destiny. That's what I'd called it. My bad luck, my always choosing the wrong person, my fate to be alone, to be unloved. But what if it wasn't destiny? What if it was just my unconscious, running the show, pulling the strings? My mind raced. All those years, feeling like a puppet, like I had no control, no choice, just repeating the same patterns over and over. The emotionally unavailable men, the constant need for external validation, the fear of abandonment. It wasn't destiny. It was a script written long ago in the shadows of my past. And my mother's voice, "You're difficult. You make things so hard." That wasn't just her voice. It was my unconscious voice. I had internalized it, made it my own. I started seeing the patterns everywhere. In my relationships, in my self-talk, the way I'd sabotage myself before anyone else could, just to prove that voice right. It was terrifying to see how much I had contributed to my own suffering, how much I had chosen the familiar pain, because the unknown, the possibility of something different, felt even scarier. But with that terror came a strange sense of power. If I'd created this reality, even unconsciously, could I also uncreate it? Could I rewrite the script? Another quote from Jung found its way to me. "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." I started to reflect on my past relationships, not just with blame, not just with pain, but with curiosity. How had I reacted? How had I transformed in those toxic interactions? I saw how I had shrunk, how I had lost my voice, how I had become a distorted version of myself. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me and my choices, and the hidden parts of me that kept choosing the same path. I began to understand. My childhood wound, that feeling of being unloved, it wasn't just a memory. It was an active force, still operating, still dictating my decisions. And the only way to stop it was to bring it to light, to make the unconscious conscious. It was like looking into a dark mirror. and seeing all the parts of me I'd tried to hide. The anger, the resentment, the deep, aching need for love. The little girl still crying inside. Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming whole, integrating all the pieces of yourself, even the ones you don't like, especially those. It was painful, excruciating sometimes, to look at the truth, to own my part in my own story, to acknowledge the patterns that had kept me prisoner. But there was a quiet strength growing too, a new kind of power, the power of knowing, the power of seeing. I wasn't destined for a life of begging for love. I was destined for something else, something greater, something true. And it started with facing the shadows, with understanding that the very things I resisted persisted, and that the only way out was through. The pain didn't vanish, not like magic, but it changed. It became understandable. The ache in my chest, the ghost of that little girl, they were still there, but now I knew why. And knowing why was everything. Jung said, "The wound is the place where the light enters." And it was true. My deepest wound, the one that had shackled me for so long, was slowly becoming my greatest teacher, my path to light. I started to practice something radical, self-compassion. It felt alien at first. I was so used to self-criticism, to that harsh inner voice, which was really just my mother's voice, echoing in my head. But now, when that voice whispered, "You're not enough," I could hear it differently. I could acknowledge it. "Oh, there you are, old friend. You're just trying to protect me." And then I could gently, firmly offer a new truth. But I am enough, and I deserve love. It wasn't easy. Some days the old patterns were overwhelming. I'd find myself slipping back, bending, pleasing, trying to earn love. But now I had tools. I had understanding. I could catch myself, pause, and make a different choice, even if it was just a tiny microscopic shift. I started setting boundaries. It was terrifying, especially with people who were used to me being a doormat. They pushed back. Some relationships even ended, and that hurt a lot. But this time, the pain was different. It wasn't the pain of rejection. It was the pain of growth, of choosing myself, of honoring that little girl who had been so desperate for love. And for the first time, I understood what Jung meant by "who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." I had spent my whole life looking outside for validation, for love, for worth, and I had been dreaming, a painful, looping dream. Now I was looking inside, and I was waking up. I learned to listen to my body, to the quiet signals of exhaustion, of anxiety. They weren't just symptoms anymore. They were messages, whispers from my soul, telling me I needed to rest, to nurture myself, to say no. My relationships began to change too. I found myself drawn to different kinds of people.